Ladies and gentlemen, we are being joined by the CEO and President at the World Travel and Tourism Council, Ms. Gloria Guevara. Ms. Gloria Guevara is a result-driven executive with 25 years plus of experience working in the travel industry in the private and public sectors, in addition to the IT industry. She has been the former Secretary of Tourism for Mexico, a cabinet position that reports to the President of Mexico, leading an industry that contributes 9% of the Mexican GDP, employing 7.5 million people directly. Ms. Gloria Guevara was named as one of the most influential women in Mexico by CNN Expansion and one of the Mexican leaders recognized by the United Nations World Travel Organization as a world key contributor. She is an advisor on the government affairs for Harvard School of Public Health and a member of the WEF Global Agenda for Travel, Tourism, and Aviation. During her time in the government of Mexico, she achieved the highest number of international and domestic tourists, breaking a new record despite the most difficult and challenging environment in recent history. Additionally, in 2012, she led the inclusion of the travel and tourism section in the G20 Los Cabos Leaders Declaration. To speak on the future of global tourism under COVID-19 crisis, please help me welcome Ms. Gloria Guevara.
Good morning. My name is Gloria Guevara. Thank you for the invitation to this future of global tourism under COVID-19. I want to specifically thank these excellencies, Khalid Khurshid, Honorable Chief Minister, and also all the distinguished guests that are joining us today. As this is a very important event and an opportunity for WTTC. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for the invitation. WTTC, or the World Travel and Tourism Council, represents the global private sector. Over 200 CEOs from around the world are our members. This organization was created 30 years ago. 30% of our members are in Asia, 30% in Europe, 30% in America, and 10% in the rest of the world. Currently, our chairman is Chris Naceta, CEO of Hilton Worldwide. And as you can see here, these are some of the faces of our members globally. We represent all the industries from airlines, hotels, OTAs, travel companies, destinations, tour operators, every single industry within the sector. For 30 years, besides speaking with one voice, we have done also research. 185 countries from around the world, we have looked at the data and their contribution for travel and tourism. These are numbers from 2019, and as you can see here, the contribution of travel and tourism for 2019 globally was 10% of the global GDP, while the economy grew 2.5%, travel and tourism grew 40% more to 3.5%. If you look at the chart in the bottom, you will see the gray line is the economy in the world, and the green line is travel and tourism. 330 million jobs around the world, depending on our sector. 54% of the workers, women, 30% youth, and 1 in 10 jobs as a contribution, as I said before. Travel and tourism has helped many nations around the world to reduce poverty, to increase education, and to provide opportunities besides protecting wildlife, culture, and of course creating jobs, as 1 in 4 jobs, new jobs created around the world in the last 5 years, considering all the sectors and all the industries, have been in travel and tourism. So very important data. Now looking at also at the data for Pakistan, very interesting. Again, this is the data for 2019. We use the same methodology so that we can compare 185 countries, as I said before. And we at WTTC consider direct, indirect, and induced. Sometimes our numbers vary with the local numbers because we need to use, as I say, the same methodology. Very impressive, the growth of travel and tourism outpaced the growth of the economy, as you can see here, 4.7 versus 3.5%, and 6% of the jobs in the country depend on our sector. 93% of the contribution was from international travelers and domestic 7%, but so some interesting numbers and an opportunity, and speaks about the potential to grow even further. Now, last year was the worst year probably in our history. And we estimated that the number of jobs impacted was going to be around 143 million jobs. As I say, no other crisis has been similar to this one. 43%, as you can see here, has been the impact on jobs. And by the end of the year, perhaps, we don't know if this is going to be the final number or it's going to be close to 174. We have seen some domestic recovery in some nations. So domestic is down still 33% or 67 of what it was in 2019. And international is still impacted, as most of the international travel has been stopped in a lot of countries. Now, we not only look at data and analyze the impact of numbers, we also try to learn from the past. We at the private sector are trying to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that we made in other situations. 2019, we issue a report based on the analysis of 90 different situations, 90 different crises in the last 20 years. And there are three very important lessons learned that I want to highlight those lessons, they have helped WTTC to define the path forward. As you will see here, you can download this report. There are 4 types of issues or crises, from political instability to natural disasters, outbreaks, and of course security and terrorism. And the second word that we have analyzed, unfortunately, is outbreaks. Now let me take you to the lessons learned based in the data that we have. The first one is, as you can see on the left, this is the world. The green line is travel and tourism. The white line is the economy in the world in the last 20 years. The blue bars are jobs. You will see 2 situations there, 9/11, which is the top left, and then financial crisis. And then if you see the chart on the top right is the G20. So whatever happens in the G20 has an impact in the world. We had 2 situations when we were able to recover. It's a V-shaped recovery in the financial crisis. We worked together. It was a public and private collaboration, and that allowed us to recover faster our sector. But look at 9/11. It took us years. Why was that? Because of the lack of coordination, the lack of collaboration, public and private and among countries. And unfortunately, that had a significant impact. Now look at the bottom right. That's China. That's China in the last 20 years. What's interesting is that the worst crisis that they faced was an outbreak. That was SARS. And they were able to recover pretty fast. Why was that? Because they were able to isolate infected people. That's why we believe that we can have a V-shaped recovery in this awful pandemic and unprecedented situation as long as we work together, public and private, and we have this international coordination. That's why we came up with some principles for the recovery. What needs to be done in order to recover? What are the things that we have to do? So here we have 4 points that we have been conveying and communicating since months, since last year actually, in April when we produced the first report. The first one, it is crucial to have public and private coordination and have this coordinated approach, specifically when you reopen borders. When is the right time to open? You need to do it in coordination with the private sector. The public sector alone would not do enough, and also with the other countries. We have a lot of examples. Some of those, for instance, is what happened with the business travelers, that they excluded quarantines in the EU or the UK, where the private sector worked with the public sector, and many other examples that you can get in our website. The second one, we need to look at the travel experience. And there is a before and after the vaccine. Yes, the vaccination is underway, and while we do the vaccination, we need to continue doing testing. We have been saying all this time, testing is the solution. We need to test people before departure and isolate the infected people because, as we know, 80% are asymptomatic, and that's what has been the major driver of the spread, that we cannot identify the people that are infected because they don't have any symptoms. So we have been calling for governments to implement a comprehensive testing model where you can have a rapid, low-cost test that will give you the results and just only allow the non-positive or the negatives actually to board the plane. Now, once the vaccination is widely available and spread throughout the country and the entire population is vaccinated, then we might see some back to new normality. But before that, we need to continue with testing contact tracing worldwide. And also define these international testing protocols. If I'm flying from London, for instance, to Pakistan, and I perform a test before departure, they will consider my test as well on arrival. The third one has to do with the protocols. One of the mistakes that we made in 9/11 was that we had countries implementing safety and security protocols, but they were not in coordination with other countries. And that impacted trust from the traveler. It took us longer to rebuild that trust, and that impacted the time that it took us to recover. So very important to rebuild trust and to work together in the same protocols. And that's what WTTC and our members around the world define these protocols for the recovery. Last but not least is to continue the support from the governments. Very important. We have some great examples of governments that have been working with the private sector and with travel and tourism. Not every sector has been impacted the same way and the same level. Our sector, unfortunately, has been impacted the most, and it's very important to receive that support and also during the recovery. Now, moving on to the protocols, let me share really quick some of the examples with you so that you understand. Our hotels offer rooms to doctors and nurses in the middle of the worst of COVID. And we were able to maintain those rooms and those hotels COVID-free because of the protocols that they were implemented. That knowledge, in conjunction with the expertise and the knowledge that we acquired from WHO, from CDC, and from experts from around the world, went through the protocols as an example in hospitality. We have defined protocols for Congress, for hospitality, for tours, for every single piece of the journey. And very important that everyone has implemented those protocols. And we're calling on nations to identify and implement the protocols at the same level than the global private sector. That is why we created a safe travel stamp, to identify the nations and also the different providers that they have implemented the protocols. Why is so important? Because if I stay in a hotel here in London, the experience should be exactly the same anywhere in the world if we have the same protocols. So that's so important. If we move to the next, you will see a map with all the destinations, more 100 destinations and countries from around the world that we have recognized. This is not a certification. This is a recognition of the protocols that they have implemented. And we invite you to follow and implement the same protocols. And we invite you to please wear the mask, make sure that you protect the people. And despite that the vaccination rollout, we need to continue taking care of each other and working together so that we can recover faster. Thank you very much for the invitation once again.